How dare they have this convention when people have to work?
Oh, it's so. Was it good though? You had a good time?
It is.
I'll have to tell you about when I went to we were so rowdy. People were so mad. Oh, man. It was great.
All right. Tell me when we're...
We are recording right now.
Okay. So, I'd like to call the Blood Endowment Board to order. And we would like to welcome our folks from the library here, and we are ready for your presentation.
Thank you. My name is Matt Goff. I am the Collection Development Manager at Davis County Library. And just as a personal note, I used to, I was the first county manager of the Kaysville Library, so this is a lot of fun for me. Okay, so first of all, let's just quickly go through what this slide is showing. This is what we had asked for last year. Now, last year I was not in the position I'm in now. I was still up in Layton at the Layton Library, but my predecessor, Trudy Cooper, our director, Chris Sanford, and Josh and Lynette behind me had organized this. And they had asked for $100,000 from the Blood Endowment Fund, and $50,000 of it was to be spent on print materials, and $50,000 on what we call e-materials. Those are e-books, e-audio. And they actually have streaming movies, too, that you can purchase. So this slide just shows that we wanted to make a special emphasis on children's materials, since working with the Blood Endowment Fund in the past, we always tried to stress children's items. The column on the far left was the projected amount, and the one next to it was how many items we had planned to purchase with that. And the column next to it is what we actually spent, and then the number of items purchased. So you can see we spent just a little bit under, and so to make up for that, we put it into a different area. But you can see that we had asked for, or we projected with the numbers we had, that we'd get about 2,400, and we bought over 2,500 items for the children. This slide just shows the rest of the print collection, $17,000. We had estimated just under 750 items. We spent, as you can see, about $20 under that and purchased over 1,000 items. So we must have hit some good sales. On the electronic collections, now these are interesting because we found that electronic items are typically 25 to 30% more than the list price for print. Print, we usually get some sort of a discount. Very rarely do we get discounts for e-materials. So this is where we spent a little bit of extra money. But as you can see, we had estimated we'd purchase about 1,400 items, and we actually purchased over 2,100. All right, so this slide here shows that the slide on the part on the left, let me see if I can get this to light up here. This is what it looks like when you go through the Overdrive app. And you look and you can see that what we've done is we've taken these collections, and we've actually called them the Blood Endowment Collection. So the middle one shows what it looks like on our website, this one right here. And then the one on the right is when you actually get into the card catalog. We put the little sticker that we have for our print materials on there, so that anybody who's looking on the catalog can say, oh, that was purchased with the Blood Endowment Fund. Okay, so for this next year, We're asking for $50,000, and we're going to just limit that to e-materials. And the reason why is because it's a high demand collection. What's interesting about those e-materials, like I said, not only are they expensive, but you buy one and only one person can use it at a time. So it's almost like a physical item. I won't say anything that will incriminate me as far as personal opinion about e-materials or how I would like to see the industry go, because I think they did this to ensure that they would have money in the future. So it'll provide more choices for patrons, and we can broaden and deepen the collection. Right now, it's very hard to get original materials because we have so many holds for the ones that we already own. So I do have a printout of all of the material that we purchased. So.
Mayor, she's.
Maria's
That's
closer.
Come on now.
All right, so there are 17 pages on each.
Oh,
And it's all one thing. That's why I put a paper clip
then
on it.
I'll make sure y'all get a copy if you'd like.
Yeah.
And this is what
I
you,
didn't want to make copies.
That's okay.
Yeah.
this is what you will be purchasing?
What they
What we
did.
did purchase last
Oh,
year.
Yeah,
okay.
so those are the titles.
We used the money for.
So,
Right.
and that's it.
All right. Thank
Have
you.
any questions for us?
All right. Board members, any questions? Yes.
Actually, I do. Just two questions. First of all, when Alan and Kay Blood, when they did this and set it up, were they specific in what they wanted this to be used for, or did they leave it up to you guys to
that's a good
determine the
question.
best use of their money? Or
Well, it was for materials only. So, like I said, I started over at the old library in 2006. And when we were planning our initial, because it apparently had not been used by the city library for several years, when we had set that up, they had told us it can only be purchased, materials only. You can't say, well, we need some shelving or we would like some office supplies or a copier or something like that. They had told us just for materials.
In the actual paperwork that I have from the endowment, it says, the purpose of the endowment fund shall be to provide funds to acquire books, recordings, and other types of written, recorded, and electronic materials for the library. So it was meant specifically for library materials.
And was one of the reasons they didn't use the money for so long as you were out of space to buy more?
Yes.
Yeah.
We didn't want to buy more materials and then have to turn around and get rid of what was perfectly good books. And now we have the space, so it's nice to be able to expand that. And the use of that building has continued to grow. It has never declined since we opened the new building. So it's the second busiest library in the system right now.
That's great. That's great.
So
great.
Do we also have I don't have children this age anymore, so I'm just wondering, how's the print library for younger kids? How's that going?
Well, that's a good question. As I was thinking on how to respond, as you may or may not know, we're in the process of expanding the Syracuse library, and our main emphasis there, well, when we opened Kaysville, we had decided to put an emphasis on the children's collections because, in my opinion anyway, the children, I don't know, it's going to sound like a Whitney Houston song, are our future.
I think that is what Whitney is.
Yeah, don't. I am not going to sing it. Don't.
Don't make me sing.
But anyway, so we're going to treat them well and let them lead the way. And as we...
It's not going to sing it, it'll just recite it.
But so about 50% of that collection in Kaysville is just the adult and the young adult. And that's how we're approaching it for Syracuse. So,
Great.
but this money isn't for Syracuse, it's for Kaysville.
right.
Correct. Okay.
The collection's much better. It's much stronger than it was. The story times they were getting between 80 and 100 kids at story time. And that first wave would go through and there'd be no books on the shelf. What we were able to purchase last year has really given them quite an influx. So now there are books on the shelf when a kid comes in. There are more choices, which is what we were trying to do. The reason why we're concentrating on ebooks this year is we really need the staff to kind of get their feet under them. Again, we've got a new branch manager, some new staff members to kind of decide what it is that they need. And then next year or the year after, we'll come to you with money for print materials again.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Hey, well, just one more question. Was it the Blood's wishes to try to keep the money, from the endowment in Kaysville? Or it seems to me, I was reading here that I guess some of this will be used through the whole system.
That's correct. When we purchase something for the collection, that happened.
It lives in Kaysville, but
Right.
it can be moved. But if somebody puts a hold on it, it can go to another branch. And that was something that was decided before we went into the new building.
Okay.
It was a decision that was made then to make it more widely accessible for everybody. But they live in Kaysville. And none of the books that are Blood Endowment books ever are moved to another branch other than just to fill a hold, and then they come right back to Kaysville.
Okay.
And how about the electronic? You say, so we've got one copy of an e-book, and can people outside of Kaysville use that book?
They can. We set it up. So when we requested the money this last time and we asked for the electronic materials, that's why, let me pull it back. That's why we started labeling them so that they could virtually live at Kaysville, if that makes sense. So if you go into the catalog and you search for a book from our online catalog and you find a title, it'll actually label which ones are purchased with the Blood Endowment money as you go through the listings. And so we do that with the physical items. So what we did, the middle place there, that's actually a page that lets you search through all of the Blood Endowment materials that have been so generously purchased with the funding. So that way we label them and they live in some
Virtually.
way at the Kaysville branch, even though they are a virtual thing. And the other thing is all of our catalogs at all of the branches have a link with that sticker that say, this is to search the Blood Endowment Fund. So they're essentially searching that collection. It lives separately.
All right. So I guess my concern is that because of the graciousness of the Bloods, everybody in Davis County is getting books. And I'm not sure exactly if that was their intent or not. But anybody else have a problem with that? I'm kind of having a problem with that. Go ahead.
Is this okay to just make a comment?
Yes, please.
On the one hand, I absolutely agree. So I'd love more print materials because they're in the library's hand. But I hope this doesn't sound, as a library user, and I know it is nice when I draw upon the resources of the county too. They come to us if we put a hold. So it's both ways where I feel.
Council, what do I refer to the council members during a
Committee member.
committee member? Barber?
Thank you. I would echo that too, because we use the county libraries as well, books as well. So I would assume even if Kaysville purchased print materials, can't I request them from another library and they would send them over there? So it functions similarly to if we had bought the print materials. So I think it's a great idea to invest in digital books. I saw the digital bookmobile that you guys have that's going around a little
Yeah, it's
coming up.
on next week.
Yeah, I think that's fun. It's just the way that we're moving. And I think paired with this, and I'm sure you're on top of it, is just some education on how to get them accessible. I feel like a while ago I had to get like a degree.
One of the
to
great
download
things about the digital books, though, is that if you're an audiobook listener and you check out that book on CD, it may have 50 uses. You may get it and a disc is scratched. You can't listen to it. You get that e-copy, and it's perfect. It works, and you don't have to worry about bringing it back. We really focus the e-books on the kids side of it also, and Matt didn't bring that up because they've got so many neat things for kids now when in regards to e-books. They have something called Tumble Books, which we have purchased, which is similar to an easy read or to a read along, where the kids read the book and it does all kinds of animations with them as they're reading the book. It'll highlight the words and really help them learn how to read, which is something that's just really amazing.
I think it's a great investment. And like I said, education on how to get them in people's hands would be great. I'm sure you're doing.
Yeah,
Committee person Garn.
Thank you. Yeah, personally, I'm satisfied with that because it seems like the books that have more tangible quality, they do reside ultimately and come back to Kaysville. In the case of the e-books, if I understand correctly, that this isn't the same thing as the DVDs or CD-ROMs that can be scratched, right?
Right.
It's just that because of licensing, only so many people can be looking at it at the same time. So in a way, it never really leaves, but I guess I see the point that if someone checks it out, then it puts pressure on the system. Might be difficult to determine, I guess, when someone's checking it out in the county library system, who's a Kaysville resident and who's not, I guess. If we even wanted to, is there the capacity to do that? Or yeah, you'd have to set something up, right? Ask for the data somehow.
And another, sorry, go ahead.
No, if you want to finish that, I do have some questions just about the finances themselves. It may be a question for Dean Story, just to understand how the endowment fund works. But
okay.
If you'd like to go ahead and answer that question.
Yeah. Now, you'd mentioned ebooks, and I'm glad you mentioned ebooks because there's ebooks, there's e-audio, and there was streaming video or e-video, whatever you want to call that. Just so you know, the money that we use with the Blood Endowment Fund does not, they have different, we found that this format is constantly changing. So, for example, the publishers have come out with something called metered access. We call them MAs for short, and we usually say something not very kind after an MA because they treat those like a physical book.
Yeah.
So the publisher will say, well, you can have this for 26 checkouts, and then you get to purchase it again because it's like it really wore out. Well, we're committed not to spend any of the Blood Endowment Fund on those type of materials, regardless of how popular they are, because that can be construed as a waste of money.
Yeah, makes sense.
So we're going to focus a lot on e-audio, which is you buy it, it's yours forever.
Yeah.
So.
Says thank you. And the question I have regarding anybody who would like to answer this as far as the Library Endowment Fund itself. An endowment fund, if I'm correct, is like a perpetual fund, right? So the corpus is protected. So when I'm looking at the principal amount is protected, and the idea is that the income it generates can then be utilized. So I was trying to figure this out just from you may have even seen it last year and forgotten, but from this sheet in the packet, interest earned as of is this FY18, is this a quarterly or a rolling average interest earned $3,176?
We did provide financial information in your packet, which you're looking at. I don't have that in front of me, but as I recall, we had the fiscal year 2017 information there, which we showed the total assets of the fund, and I think that top number is the corpus, and then there is amount available to spend. So the corpus is about 680, as I recall. Okay. And the amount available to spend is about $85,000.
Yeah, it has an endowment amount of $687,000 and restricted for expenditures of $89,000. So the request of $50,000 would be
from 89
available for expenditures.
Correct, and that 687 would continue. That's the corpus. And what we do every year is we take 10% of the interest earnings during that year and add it to the principal to keep up with inflation. So 90% of the interest becomes available to spend, to loan, to donate to the Davis County Library System.
And last question: the fund articles may prescribe what can be invested in. I noticed, $502,000 in cash and only $274,000 in investments. Since it is a corpus, why not invest a little less in cash and maybe more in even treasuries or something that earns more than cash?
Interest earnings, the margins have been so tight there that we found that the PTIF is paying almost as much as 12-month, 24-month CDs. So and we have over time, depending on what interest rates you're doing, put some in some longer-term maturities. But currently about Yeah, 502 is at the PTIF fund, and 274 is in certificates of deposit.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any more questions? Okay. I believe we take a vote on this. Is that correct?
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I think you need a motion for the,
Yeah.
is it the 50,000 that's the request this year?
And also, I need to know if I vote or not. Do I vote on this?
Does she?
I think it's,
You have in the past.
Okay.
The chair has.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yes,
Ask-
chairperson, or whatever you are, committeeman. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Just to follow up on the earnings on that, if we give out, this doesn't seem like it's making a big return. The reason why we gave out 100,000 last year and are able to 50 is just we haven't spent in a while.
That's correct. And this is just the interest posting as of March. As we finish up the fiscal year, as we reconcile all the interest earning accounts, we'll see a larger interest post there.
Do you know what your average is, long-term average on that account?
I don't recall.
That is a good point, Committeeman, though, because, oh, sorry.
May I?
Go ahead.
Committeeman Garn, there you go.
Thank you. It is a good point because, at some point, we're well within our spending limits now, but in the future, if investment returns don't go up, then you'd have to curtail that spending, and certainly you'd violate a covenant if you go below the 687 or whatever that amount is. So, I don't think a council would even have the prescribed legal right to go below that at some point.
Can I follow up?
Yes, Committeeman Hanson.
Just, I guess, and I don't know the long term because it seems like we spent 100,000 on last year, but 50 was E, 50 was hard copy. Is that from what we saw? And it will spend 50 more. That's almost 100,000 into E, but only 50. But I don't know the long term. That was only last year. But was last year the first time we've did?
Yes, first year we've done e-materials. Usually it's been books, hard copy, books of materials.
Have we filled out the space in the print materials?
No, when we purchase, we want to make sure that what we're purchasing is needed and is well-rounded. So it gives the staff a chance to come to you with a good list of quality materials that they're not just buying to fill shelves. They want to make sure what they buy is what's needed.
Do you have all the Henry and Mudges?
Probably yes.
Mr. Potter and Tabby's, all of them? Anyway, I'm being facetious. They're good books.
I think another consideration is format.
Could you speak into the mic? Thank you.
And this came up last time too. Another consideration is format. So what we're trying to provide to the public is it's amazing how many separate formats people say every time that there's a new format. Oh, well, this other format that's old is going to go away. We fail to see that in practice. What really happens is we have yet another format to keep up with. So Henry and Mudge in audio and in print and in paperback and in e-audio, and so this proliferation. So there ends up being a demand from the public for a wide variety of these types of materials. For one title, there might be 6 separate formats that the public requests or that the public expects to see. And so this sort of mitigates some of that challenge that we have. Another thing that happens is we never use these exclusive, so we don't shortchange the Kaysville branch because of these funds. These are always used to enhance, if that makes sense. So it's in addition to the funds we've already put into the Kaysville branch of the system. Does that make sense? Am I misspeaking?
Yeah.
Okay. So if that helps a little bit with how we use the funding. This is in addition to the money that we've spent on the system, and in particular in the Kaysville branch. We don't say, oh, well, you're getting this money, we won't give you this other money. We spend both. So.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
If I could just add one thing, too.
Sure.
Just like what Josh was saying, this is truly an enhancement, but this is in addition to, last year was my first year playing with the overall budget, book budget, regardless of what we were going to do with the Blood Endowment Fund. And Kaysville right now has, because of the circulation that Lynette mentioned, has the second highest budget of county money going into it for materials as well.
Okay,
so
that's great. All right. Looking at the time, we probably need to have a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the 2018 Blood Endowment request for funds.
I'll second.
All right. Let's go around and vote.
Committee Member Hanson, aye.
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 And aye. All right. Motion passes 5-0, and with Councilmember Hanson absent. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I would now close the Blood Endowment Board meeting, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We are still recording, and just not audio, as a little bit of audio, just so you know. All right.
Don't worry, there's no risk of me singing anything. while we're still
Good
recording.
thing.
Oh, my goodness. Jake, I was thinking about you last week. I think you would have enjoyed some of the meetings we took. I'm certain there was one. We got some frustrated cities like that. They were so mad at the state.
Oh, the state, yeah.
From the legislature. There was a guy, he was saying that he had a meeting with the leadership of the legislature on some city issues. And he said they told him within 2 years, he says there will be no impact fees.
And this is a pretty aggressive, see, this is where I think you, I don't know what we call it, those who, in the legislature who support these kinds of initiatives would call themselves conservative. I don't know that that's true.
No, all developers is what it is.
Yeah.
They're just looking out for themselves is what they're doing. Right. Well, they passed that bill a couple of years ago. What happens is, they're reviewing all the impact fees in the cities. And if there's, if they haven't used them all up, they have to write the check out to the developer. It's all the individuals that buy the lots, but they're giving that money to the developers. Right. I tell you what.
Well, that's even a different thing than, I think the other phenomenon you have, which is, I remember my dad saying this in 1972 when I was 14 years old, when I was leaving the mayoralship of Salt Lake City, saying, our legislature, they're sure much exercised about, and rightly so, about the federal government's unfunded mandates and their dictates to states. Where's the Constitution in that case? Right. But then the legislature turns around, ultimate hypocrisy, and tries to control everything that cities do at the local level. So much for the most local level governs best.
You know what, Jake? If your dad was running today, he'd have zero chance of winning in Salt Lake County.
My dad said that. Actually, he said, I was at a time when I won because my view, which I always expressed what my actual feeling was no matter what, but it just happened to coincide with what the people, the majority of the people agreed.
It's a
I think you got a few brownie points.
I want the recognition presentation first, for normally, but maybe just
he even said, I think even 10 years ago, he said, if I were to run today for U.S. Senate, I would not win. There's no way I would win. And this was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
I'm talking about, you mean Salt Lake City.
Or mayor. Oh, no, he would not.
20 minutes on.
Yeah, but I think
strange details about their life.
If you look at every time I come
We'll get them back, don't you worry. You just need to hold out as an employee for a little bit longer.
It's difficult for.
Don't give up on us yet. We'll get them back.
It's difficult for.
Has it been 6 months yet?
Person to get elected.
feels like it's inside. It's right. It's 4.5.
Right. Oh my gosh, we need different chairs.
What's a quarter?
Yeah.
What's a quarter or twice? Well, for kids.
Okay.
I don't think we did.
It's prayer and.
I'll turn around.
Yeah.
Right.
That seems like people would say so. Happy to do.
Okay, from my angle, it's 7. So, I'd like to call the May 3rd, 2018 City Council meeting to order, and we will start with our opening given to us by Councilmember Hanson.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this opportunity we have to come together as a city council and go over the business of the city. We're thankful for this great city that we live in this great country that we live in, this great state. We ask you to please help us that our minds will be active tonight, that we can be keen and consider what's best for our city. We're thankful for our families and all the support that they give us. And we do say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Could you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. All right. The first item on our agenda is we're going to have a presentation by our Public Works Director, Josh Belknap.
Sorry, it took me a minute. Mayor and Council, thank you very much for the opportunity to be presenting to you kind of a yearly report of Public Works for the last year. We love these opportunities. I'm sure you guys are excited. They're in there. Okay. We'll just go for it. So just a little bit about what we do. Public Works, as all of you know, is in charge of streets, stormwater, and water for Kaysville City. That's kind of a simplified version. There's a few other things that we take care of, but in a nutshell, that is it. Our streets department, we're in charge of, obviously, general road maintenance, which has been a topic of interest as of late. All signage on streets, tree trimming, water meter reading, curb painting, etc. Then our stormwater department, we manage over 100 miles worth of storm and land drain pipes. And we are in charge of the SWIP requirements with the state and federal government, the MS4 and general permit requirements as well as water meter reading. The water department is comprised of our culinary system, tanks, hydrants, valves, pipes, etc. Also, over 150 miles of pipeline in that system. Heavily regulated. What we do is in response to requirements put on us by the State Division of Drinking Water, and with them also water meter reading. How we do it, we have those three main departments staffed as such. Streets has 4 full-time staff, and the funding is comprised of Class C funds. At times it can be the active transportation option, the road fee, which isn't in effect right now, but I believe the ordinance was passed last council meeting. And then all other operations that are non-streets related are general fund. for the streets department. Stormwater, 3.5 full-time staff. It's 3.5, not because we're being politically incorrect, but one of the staff members in stormwater is also in charge of garbage cans, delivering those to residents, fulfilling work orders. And the funding for those operations is from the stormwater fee. The water department, we have 5 full-time staff, and that's probably the most regulated department of public works, and the funding for that comes from the sale of culinary water. Some exciting things this last year. We had a really great year for streets projects. I see the mayor smiling. I'm guessing that's at the picture here. In addition to our streets projects, which were rehab and preventative maintenance, our individual staff placed over 2,000 tons of asphalt materials in potholes. And I think the biggest focus has been trying to further our vision of methods and materials that we use in regards to roads. You can see here the picture. One of our staff members, Cody Thompson, received an award from the Utah Asphalt Pavement Association for the work that he's doing within UAPA to further the discussion and advance the methods and materials that we and other cities use. Stormwater has been focused largely on using less invasive methods of maintaining the system. Cast in place pipe projects where we're not having to excavate to replace a damaged pipe. I've got an example back here of a blockage, a mineral deposit in a pipeline that we removed rather than replacing the pipe. We were able to bring in a contractor to assist us to remove that blockage. And then management of SWIPs for 60 to 70 sites. That's a large part of what we're doing right now. Water, we had our triannual inspection from the state, and that was comprised of 2 state staff, 3 county staff, the health department, and then our water staff participated in that. And what they do, it's just kind of a white glove inspection. Let's come in, let's see how it's functioning, how you're taking care of your responsibility to the residents of Kaysville. Had a good encounter with them, but did get some recommendations from them, particularly with flushing hydrants, inspections, valve exercising, etc. That previously we hadn't been doing as much as we'd like to be doing. This previous year, we've had a large focus on Success Framework, which I think has been talked about by other departments. Success Framework, if I understand correctly, is an initiative from the governor, from Governor Herbert, where his recommendation, for lack of a better word, to state departments is we'd like you to find increases in efficiencies. And I think it was 20% is the goal. I could be incorrect there, but we'll talk a little bit more about that here in the coming slides. And then just overall, trying to increase our focus on safety for personnel, for residents, etc. So this is currently our Success Framework kind of flow chart of work as it pertains to water meters. That's what we decided to focus on. You can see over here, Success Framework is an equation which gets me excited as an engineer. I love variables. So you've got your Q times T over OE. So Q in our case here is the percent of the system comprised of smart meters or digital meters, we've referred to them as, which are these Neptune, the T10 meters. T is the total number of metered connections, that's both residential and commercial in Kaysville, which is about 8,000. between the two. And then OE, the operating expense, is the man hours just from my department spent reading meters each month during the summer. That does not include having to go out on rereads. So as you can see here, this process is kind of cumbersome. It takes about 4 weeks to finish the initial read of the city. We do that every month during the summer for about 7 months. And right now, as we plug in, so Q sub C, T sub C, and OE sub C, we get a value of 3.89. There aren't units to that. We're not concerned about the units. We just want everything to be consistent here as we're comparing it to the future. So that future, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball that we can see exactly what it's like. But we've tried to be very conservative in our estimates here. You can see that the work process is visually quite more efficient. The values and inputs for those variables, so previously it was 3.89. Again, being incredibly generous and conservative, we come up with a value of 444, which is an increased efficiency of 11,000%. I was hesitant to put that number on there because 11,000 looks like a number of that is not possible. But going from utilizing 8 to 10 of my personnel that are not only water but are streets and stormwater, and sending them out for about 3 weeks, and they're spending at least 6 hours a day of their time collecting that information. That doesn't even include, if we find errors, if somebody wrote a number down wrong, having to go back out to where it can be done in an hour or a couple of days if there is an issue. Helps you to understand why there's such an increase in the efficiency there. This is last council meeting as we had a resident ask about return on investment. We want to provide that information, and this is it. I can't give exact, quantitative values of, this many dollars are saved. A lot of it is not quantitative but qualitative of, hey, we now have the ability for our streets crews to focus more on streets issues. Our stormwater crew now has the ability to focus more on stormwater issues. And water is focusing more on the requirements from regulations rather than spending this time out, 2 people in a crew reading meters. And I've brought with me, is it kosher to do show and tell?
Absolutely. It's highly encouraged.
Of course.
Pass this around first. It's not gross or contaminated.
I feel like it's gross.
So this is a meter that we just replaced a few weeks ago. It's a Badger meter that was manufactured in 1960. And last week, as we discussed, we try to shoot for a service life of at least 20 years for a meter. This meter's been in the ground since 1961. And the efficiencies of the meter are affected. It starts to decrease what it's able to count. We've been generous to say, well, maybe they're 80% efficient, but as we've talked with industry professionals, a meter like that is maybe more like 60% efficient. So, again, I have an old meter. Awesome to get free water, but we don't really want to encourage that. So what we're wanting to do is you flip the lid on that. You can see that there's just a dial that requires personnel to go out, open up the meter box, then flip the lid, read the number out to somebody in the truck. They write it down. That number is brought back to City Hall on a piece of paper. It's given to Holly in the billing department. Holly then types that into the computer. And if Holly notices, gosh, this seems really off, it doesn't seem right, or, I think the reading this time is lower than it was last time, there's been a mistake, she'll send us back out. And that process, the rereads, is at least another week with those maybe 6 to 7 people this time. So our goal is we want meter reading to be done all the time, to be done quickly, to be done accurately. Right now, we only read 7 months out of the year, so in the winter, we're not reading meters. We're guessing as we send bills out. It's not a good idea, in my opinion. It's more than just a guess. There's some education to that, but sometimes we have to true it up of, well, we estimated more, we estimated less, and we have to then come back to that with residents later. So this is something that we've been focused on for the last 3, 4, 5 years, well before I was here. This is an easy target. It's low-hanging fruit. We've been budgeting these funds and largely have gone unexpended. So we want to use these funds now. Let's focus on replacing these meters, get it up to date, streamline the process, and safeguard the resource, that water, and also the time of personnel and staff. So yeah, that's the majority of my presentation. I guess if you guys have any questions.
Okay. Councilmember Garn.
Thank you. So this is a monthly amount, the 576 hours for
hours per month
is per month. So even if you subtract the 18 under OEF, then you've got 558 or something like that hours savings.
Hours that
month.
aren't being expended, and that's just within my department. This 18 hours that you see right there. Again, talking to Holly and talking with the vendor, we think it's more like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Click the button, the data starts to come in. Holly will still review that, and the software will help her review that. 18 was, hey, worst case scenario, if we're having to send somebody out, and we don't want to do all the billing until we know for a fact everything is 100% comfortable, we'll send somebody out, maybe do some maintenance on a meter, or is there something with a data collector that's kind of funky? But again, we think it's more along the lines of 1 to 3.
So, and granted, I guess some of the employees that are now spending a lot of their time, I mean, basically you've got, 3, roughly speaking, if you round it down a little bit to 6,000 hours a year, that's 3 full-time employees worth of time
Right.
to do this process that you're saving, and you would probably repurpose those employees to focus more on maintenance tasks and what they're, stick to the netting or
Yeah, so as stated, the IPS, that state inspection, they came in and said, you know what, you're doing a good job, but there are some things that you guys probably need to be focusing on in addition to the bare minimum. So those hours give us the ability to chase those things. As we look at this focus on safety, as we have staff and personnel that are down in confined spaces, we're required to have somebody act as a whole watch and stand there, and they don't focus on anything else. They don't hand tools to people. They watch the individual. So as we're looking at this, we need more hours to get done what we need to get done. As a kid, my dad would say there's not enough hours in the day, and I never really understood that as a kid. Like, well, there's plenty of hours. I have a great time. It's awesome. But it makes sense more so now, the older I've got in life. So
and one follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
So it's just a very rough return on investment calculation, but whatever the right number of employees are with new requirements or better maintenance, higher quality in the formula, however those hours are repurposed, the fact of the matter is, if you look at it from an opportunity cost perspective, that's 3 full-time FTEs. And if you looked at them fully costed, with benefits and everything, and again, just guessing, very conservatively, I guess, if you were to say that was $80,000 a year per employee times 3, you've got $240,000. There's your cost savings or opportunity cost savings, whether it's repurposed or not, applied elsewhere, and that would be your benchmark for a rough return on investment.
Yeah, potentially. One thing we do know is we've estimated, we believe we're spending at least $11,500 a month just on salary, wage for employees to go out and read these meters. So eliminating that as quickly as possible, getting these meters installed 1 year instead of 2-3 years, eliminating that expenditure, not only the money, the money's going to be spent, but can we spend those wages, those hours, as you're talking about, the equivalent of full-time employees, on other tasks?
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mayor, can I ask?
Yes, Councilmember Hanson.
Just a quick question on the Neptunes that you already put in. They were staggered, weren't they? Not all at one time.
So what they started doing is they spent about 6 to 7 months identifying how many or what meter do we want to go with. They then identified the Neptune, and then they started assigning crew. Hey, one of your tasks throughout the day is going to be here and there installing new meters. Largely that was in response to Holly saying, we've got an issue with this meter, it doesn't look like it's reading accurately. Okay, let's go out and replace it with the Neptune. Or in the case of east of Fairfield, I think there were some neighborhoods that we said, okay, let's focus on this neighborhood as we have time available, and let's install these new meters. So staggered as far as time, yeah, it hasn't been a, all hands on deck, let's get this done right away. It's been over the course of about 3 or 4 years.
Okay. And the reason I was asking, do we still keep the historical usage on each of those? I wonder, again, if anybody asks for ROI, you could get some, pre-post, especially where you talk about the ineffectiveness of the. Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, could you do some of those? Do we still have that data from?
Yeah, I believe we maintain that data.
Okay.
As part of the billing operation. I don't know for exactly how long, but yeah.
There might be some data there to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
10 years.
10 years of data. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barber?
Yeah, one last question, and this may be more for the budget part of our meeting, but with there's so much talk about roads and the additional money that you'll have to put into roads this next year, will we be hiring additional people to do that? Will we just be accommodating it? How will that affect your department?
For roads? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so last year we had requested an additional full-time employee to try and meet the requirements in the streets department. We've kind of retooled the approach and have found other ways to try and get those needs met without acquiring an additional full-time employee. So the streets department currently gives 2 people a month for meter reading, where they already only have 4. So instead of streets impacting water, it's now water releasing the impact on streets.
Okay. So all of the additional funds that we're sending to your department for roads will all go to materials?
So other departments don't send funds other than wages. If somebody's working for the water department reading meters, then the water fund would be paying that wage.
Mayor, may I?
Yes,
I think what Councilmember Barber's asking is we're proposing to put in $3.75, is that the number, $1 million into roads. Mm-hmm. That dollar amount is are we adding more people with that dollar amount?
Oh no, that's 100% what is going onto the ground, the finished product.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is my question.
Yeah, sorry.
No,
Right.
you're fine.
And also another good point that you're bringing up is that the funds that are for water are specifically for water, and we now have a road enterprise fund, and anything that goes into that stays with the roads. So even though you oversee all those different responsibilities, the money that goes into that stays strictly with those.
Yeah, so we try and keep those as separate as possible. There are some instances where if we have a water line replacement like we're doing on Market Street in Borough, the water is the reason that some of that street is being impacted. So we want water to bear some of that cost. But otherwise, water funds stay in water, stormwater funds stay in stormwater, and street funds stay in streets.
All right, very good. And Councilmember Hanson?
Just to follow up, when you said 100% of the money, we will contract out some of those roads.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah,
some
so
will go, but it's a contracted
the dollars
fee.
themselves aren't in the pavement, but the dollars themselves are 100% going towards
Getting
what
the
is
pavement
ending
there.
up in
With the cost of the contracted labor, but we're not
Exactly.
hiring new. That's a bid out price, and okay,
Correct.
just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
Okay. All right, and Councilmember Kern?
Just one follow-up, because I realized I won't get a chance to ask this question if the other item stays in the, for the water meter stays in the consent realm or on the agenda. So I'm wondering, how long will it take to get to 100% in the community, 100%?
Transition to those newer meters.
Yeah.
So on the PO that we've submitted on the consent agenda, we believe that it can be closer to a year and a half process versus a 2 to a 3 year process if we were trying to do that in-house.
That's fast. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Josh, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your presentation. Okay, I forgot to mention.
Does he want his meter back? Never mind, go on.
It's okay. I forgot to mention, if you would like to speak in regards to any of our action items, you may go sign up out on the clipboard that's in the hall, the lobby. Also, if you are going to want to speak at public comment at the end of the meeting, you'll need to sign up, and that sign-up sheet is out in the hall. All right. Declaration of any conflicts of interest. Do we have any conflicts of interest with council members tonight? No? Okay. All right. Our next item is the consent agenda. Would anybody like to have anything removed from consent? Yes.
The water meter purchase.
Okay.
And the waste contract.
Okay. All right. So A and C. All right. Thank you. All right. Would anybody like to move the consent agenda minus A and C? So basically B.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn, seconded by Councilmember Page. All in favor, let's go with Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
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 Okay, let's go first with A, Councilmember Adams.
The only concern is quickly that in our budget session we talked about this. I have nothing against the company individually. I just have a recommendation that I would make that we bid this out. It was stated on record in our meeting that this company approached us and asked us to not bid them out again. I think they've had our contract for
8 years.
8 years. Is that what it is? 8? Seems like a little longer than that.
It's been longer than that. It's been 8 years with no increase.
Oh.
Yeah, seems like it's been longer than 8. I think it's been a long time.
Forever.
So this isn't pointing a finger at the company at all, but as far as, being approached saying, hey, if you don't bid us out, we will actually give you a discount and lower your rates. But if you bid us out, we're going to raise your rates. I just feel like there's a little bit of a lack of competition in that space and free enterprise. So I would recommend that we take another look at that.
Shane or Dean, do you want to speak to that? We were all in the meeting together. Shane?
Well, a couple of months ago, I sent out this request from Robinson and asked for feedback. I only received, I think, 2 clear decisions, I guess, from council members saying that they would be comfortable staying with Robinson. If you look at the numbers that we provided in your packet, we believe that I think we're the lowest in of the ones that I don't know if we have all of Davis County in there, but we've got looks like 8 or 9 cities, maybe 10 even. That if Robinson was willing to keep that rate the same, we would be the lowest except for Syracuse. I think we're 8 or 9 cents more than them on the first can. and a little bit more on the second count as well. But other than that, we were the lowest of any of those other cities. And so we just felt like this was an opportunity to take advantage of a situation as well where we feel very comfortable with the service that we're receiving. That's probably something that we would reiterate. A neighboring city there to the south of us went out to bid, and they didn't end up going with the low bid in their situation, but went with their existing contractor because they were happy with the service. So I think that good customer service can't be discounted. For getting that as well as one of the lowest bids around, I think it seems like a win-win, and I think the prospect of going out to bid was what got us this freezing of the rate, if you will. Again, as I mentioned in my email a couple months ago, if the council wants to go out to bid, you never know what you'll get. You might get a lower bid than what Robinson is proposing. You might get a higher bid. So we're not willing to recommend to take that course of action.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Adams, did you have something?
Just so you consulted with 2 council members 2 months ago, and they were okay with this?
I emailed all of the council. I emailed all of the council, and I heard back from 2 at the time. And then we had a discussion about it in the budget meeting, as you referenced.
Mm-hmm. So I think that I don't know if we're going to get any lower. We're second lowest in the county already. I don't think going out to bid is going to net us an even lower rate. So I don't vote, but it seems to me we have good service at a good price. So. Yes, Councilmember Barber.
After we talked about this at the budget session, I set out looking into neighboring cities and seeing how much they were paying and what they'd found, not knowing that you would provide this information readily for me. So anyway, I talked to a couple cities and saw their process, and I couldn't find anyone that had found a better rate. And so to me, it confirmed that I think it's a good idea to stick with them.
And again, the concern is Adams. The concern is simply that are we ensuring that there's fair competition in the marketplace? So that's it. It's a little strange to have a vendor come and say, "Don't bid me out." I don't know when's the last time we bid them out. Can you help us understand that, Dean? Do you remember? Too long to remember?
Too long to remember.
Decade.
Maybe just a point of clarification. I don't believe Robinson ever asked us to not bid it out. He came in and requested another extension, which he has done for the last several years. So I don't think in my opinion, I don't think he was holding anything over our head. I think he was just asking for another extension, agreeing to provide that service at the same rate. The purpose of bidding is to get the best possible service at the least cost to the taxpayer, and I think in this case we're there. I think we're satisfied with the service. I think we have excellent rates. So our recommendation, again, would be to extend for another 2 years.
So the correction on that would extend into our budget session, because what I conveyed is what we were told, just for the record. So that meeting should be amended also, because we were told that they requested that it not be bid out.
I think that might have been me, and so we'll definitely look at the minutes on that.
The letter clarifies it.
Yeah, the letter does clarify it. Any questions on this side?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, I just is a comment allowed?
Yes. I think probably we should have a motion.
Yeah, I just
go ahead.
and then discuss.
Why not?
Okay, I'll make a motion to and then just discuss after. I'll make a motion to approve 2-year continuation of the contract with Robinson Waste Services.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember Barber. Comments? Councilmember Garn.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just say that this seems to make sense, and as important as competition in the marketplace is, I'm not sure the city has an antitrust role to play. I mean, our job, I think, as a council is to ensure the best value, and you have to consider both quality of service, I think is very important. I mean, if you want to get all of Kaysville upset with us, one way is to, of course, charge more than is necessary, and that's why it's important to ensure that we have a good price. But even You'll even get more attention if all of a sudden the quality of delivery, and I'm not suggesting that any other vendor would not provide quality service. I'm just saying that's the assessment is, value, quality, and price. And in this case, it's hard to imagine a better deal for Kaysville, at least for the next 2 years.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Let's go to a vote. Councilmember Page?
Aye.
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 Nay.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you. Let's go to C, water meter purchase order. Councilmember Barber.
Yeah, so as a note, last week we had a presentation and then we just quickly approved it. And I appreciate it. I had some feedback from residents that felt like we didn't vet it out very much and we didn't have enough of the information about the return on investment, which I think Josh has done a really good job with in this previous discussion. So I will say I appreciated that, and I think it's all been covered. My main question was, and Josh can come up and talk to this, was on the customer portal line item that's for the $24,000. I looked into what we actually get from that portal and the experience for residents, and I'm a little hesitant, as Josh knows, to approve that.
Right, yeah. So I believe the way that we had termed it is the customer portal option. From staff's perspective, it's kind of sixes to us. If residents want that, it does provide some information, but I don't think provides kind of the, for lack of a better term, the connected access that I think we're wanting to see. If residents want it, yeah, let's pursue it. If residents don't, then we wouldn't include that as part of what we're purchasing.
I think. Oh.
Yes, go ahead, please.
So I completely agree. I was hoping it would provide a lot of data and integrations for my smart home and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But it's not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. So to the point, right now it doesn't have that functionality that we're looking for. But the nice thing is this can be an option that's added at any point in the process of, hey, you know what, they've made some advancements with their technology, with the software. We like this now and we want to pursue it now. Whereas right now we have the nice option of it doesn't affect anything else in the meter installation, the process, the transition.
Great. Okay. Yes, Councilmember.
So I think the decision we need to make, and I'd look to others, is we either buy this customer portal, which is a completely separate thing that I as a resident would need to sign into, and I could just look at my metering and just see. I couldn't really do anything with it. I could just see a read on it, which is fine. If we didn't purchase this, from what I understand, I would, if I wanted information about my water usage, I would have to call City Hall manually and get it rather than have it come.
Yeah, call City Hall or call Public Works and have us, where we have access to that data, try and provide that.
So it is a trade-off. I feel like it's a tough call because I don't know how many would use it.
So that's it's somewhere around 24.5, I think.
24.5, yeah.
That's an upfront year one, and that includes the setup of the software, some training, the licensing, and then every year after that is some odd $1,000 a year just for the license. So
it's a tough one.
We put it as an option because we didn't see the oh man, smoking gun. This is bang for the buck. So
other than that, I think I'm good.
Okay.
I think all of our questions about the return on investment, I believe you already spoke to. So
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Hanson.
Can I just ask a follow-up question on that? How many people do we have currently calling in to ask about their water?
I can't speak to City Hall, but it's extremely minimal with us. We provide that typically if there's a water leak where somebody's toilet is leaking, and you can show them with the data we have on a tablet, hey, do you see right here, there's a constant usage, and that's indicative of some small leak within your home on the other side of the meter. But that's all I've seen us providing.
Okay, Councilmember Barber.
You do get it on your utility bill, the simple readout.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
And it's a month late.
What we can provide is we can show a graph of by increments, 5, 10, 15 minutes, look at your usage over time, alarm setup of, hey, there is an issue at this location, you guys need to look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was hoping I would get as a resident, like on my phone, hey, you have a lot. Not there yet. We're working on it.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Mayor, can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Sure.
I wonder if that 24,000, is that something we could not purchase immediately and purchase down the road if we wanted to?
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't need to be installed now, doesn't need to be purchased now. If we did arrive at that point of, you know what, we want to do this, whether it's with this option or another option, we have that ability to make that decision financially and install it.
Okay.
Never.
All right.
Okay, let me
Thank you.
Just,
Councilmember Page.
just one comment. I wish we had these several years ago when, I had the city come and read my meter. Through the winter they guess or whatever, and then I get the meter, and I got a bill for $900 and some. But then I found out the reason is because I had a leak in the system, which if we had this, I would have known and saved the city. I mean, not only did it cost me, but hundreds of thousands of gallons of water have disappeared and fertilized the ground down in the hollow.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a good thing, and all that. I'm looking forward to actually drink smart water instead of dumb water.
It's infused.
My stupid water. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. I'd entertain a motion at this time. Oh,
I think we have.
yes.
Do we have one?
No, we don't.
No, we
we
don't.
should have, actually.
Okay.
But,
Do you want to
I'll make a motion that we approve the request for the water meter purchase order.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Page.
Question, did I need
Yes.
to specify?
Yes.
Yes.
My bad, sorry.
Okay.
Secondary motion?
How about
Can I do that?
just amend your motion?
I'd like to amend my motion to approve the water meter purchase order with the exemption of the customer portal.
All right. And does the second concur? Do you agree with that? Not including the purchase of the portal?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. So any further comments? Councilmember Garn.
Yeah, I do agree. This is sort of a tough one to decide on. We don't have demand now. However, Councilmember Page's comment that, hey, if I'd checked on that, I would have saved water, and maybe I wouldn't have had that $900 bill. So I do think if we, my thought was if we do spend that money and provide that utility not the interactive utility that Councilmember Barber would have liked, but at least to be able to see what the water usage is at any point in time, that we, somehow broadcast that, or maybe, I'm fine with it being delayed now, but maybe use Qualtrics or something to see how many people in the community would actually use that feature if we added it later.
Yeah, I think that's a great option. One of the nice things that we do have is we have the ability to be almost constantly tracking this data and information, where in Councilmember Page's instance, hey, we've noticed an issue, rather than letting it go for a few months, a couple days maybe, let's get on this and alert you and help you find a solution. And the vendor that we've been utilizing, one of the things that we've really liked about them is the customer service, and they are extremely proactive in, hey, we want to alert you to updates, as software reaches that ability to have that functionality that we want to see. We're being made aware by the vendor without them being pushy. Just, hey, here's some information. If you want it, you have it. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. All right. I think we're ready for a vote. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes 5-0. Okay. Now we're moving on to our action items. Thank you. Thank you. Item A, adoption of the tentative budget for fiscal year 2019. Shane, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Based on the previous budget retreat we had a couple of weeks ago, we've included a tentative budget, a balanced budget for you to review. Passing this budget tonight is kind of a nice kickoff to the budget process, especially for our residents. They can then review this tentative budget and make comments and interact with you and as well as with staff. So we would recommend that you approve this tentative budget tonight. Please keep in mind that this in no way is a final action, and that I think the tentative budget almost always changes between tentative and final. So this isn't your last chance. This is kind of your first chance at it. And we'd also encourage you, as part of your motion, to set the public hearing. We think that June 7th is the right date for that public hearing, which would be give us one more meeting after to approve the budget on June 21st. So,
Okay, thank you.
and we're here for questions.
Okay, thank you. No one has signed up to comment on this item. Again, we're not doing anything official other than releasing it to the public, releasing it out into the wild so people can start to look at it, make comments, and interact with council members to share their feedback on this. So any questions at this time? Questions? Okay. Yes, Councilmember Hanson?
As we go through the process and before we get to final budget, how do we get numbers changed? I mean, was that a discussion back and forth?
I think it's just for us looking for consensus from the council. So in my mind, it would be a nice work item discussion if you want to bring something up that you think should be changed in some way. If we can get some kind of consensus from the council, we'll go ahead and make those changes as we go, and then have that ready for your inspection again in June.
Thank you.
And Nick, kind of a question for you. So if a council member finds something in the budget that they're uncomfortable with, it's okay for them to contact the other council members and say, hey, I'm looking at this item and it seems to me that this should be changed. It's okay for them to go talk to the other council members individually and make their case. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, as long as there's not a quorum and
Okay.
you're not going to vote on it and discuss it. But if you went one-on-one, that's in compliance with the Open and Public Meetings Act.
Okay, so probably instead of waiting until the night when we're supposed to be passing this budget, if there are things in the budget that you're concerned about, I'd appreciate it if you'd let me know ahead of time. So, and because I think that's what this body is here for, right? Is to make those policy decisions. So please do, and as you're talking to residents as well, yeah, please feel free to contact other council members about how you'd like to see things changed. All right.
Question on that, Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Barber.
How does that, if we want to see a change, shouldn't that be done in a work session, the actual change? You're just talking about the deliberation, and then the change can happen anytime after this preliminary.
Yeah,
budget.
I understood the mayor's question to say, if you have a concern and you want to field it out amongst the other council members and figure out if this is just you or is this everybody, that's appropriate to do one-on-one. Of course, if we were going to make a change, that would need to happen in the public meeting.
Yes.
Either the work.
So we wouldn't change it before the next meeting. We would just change it in the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. But then everybody would be kind of up to speed on where you were at, as it were.
And that's what
if
we
that's
have
okay.
Later on in our.
It seems like that's how I've seen it done.
And we have our work session later on.
Yeah.
And then this meeting. That's when we can talk about things.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Page.
Just a comment, and this is for all the council members. I've already talked to several of the department heads about their budgets, and I haven't had any of them chop my head off for asking them a question, and they've been very forthright and explain if I have a concern about something, and ask them why they would do a certain thing or what their philosophy is. And I encourage everyone. I mean, this is go to the source and find out why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that's a good way of handling it, and to see what their thinking is and what their vision is for their departments. So I'm just making that comment.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think that every department head I've talked to, they're more than willing to discuss with us. So, okay, I think I would like to entertain a motion at this time that includes setting June 7th for a public hearing.
Well, I move that we adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2019 and have June 7th, is it 6th or 7th? 7th as our public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Page, seconded by Councilmember Hanson. Any other comments at this time? Okay, we'll start a vote with Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Would like to have had this at least yesterday, so due to that, nay.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 4-1. Thank you. All right, so let's go to Resolution 18-4-01, IPA project approval for alternative repowering.
Yes. Mayor, we have Bruce and Gary, I think, still here.
Mm-hmm.
If we have any questions about this, but if you remember, we talked about this last time, talked a little bit about the IPA project. I think Councilmember Garn, I think, had some questions that I think Bruce was able to answer between meetings. And so we feel like these two resolutions are ready. You'd have to make individual motions, but I think both B and C address a similar issue there. So
Okay.
we're here for questions.
Okay. Nobody has signed up for public comment on this issue, so we'll go directly to council member questions. Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for item B.
Well, I move that we adopt the resolution 18-4-01.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Page, seconded by Councilmember Barber. Any comments at this time? All right, we'll go to a vote. Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, similarly, nobody signed up to comment on this item either, so I'll go to councilmember questions, if any, at this time. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for this item.
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution for the Fifth Amendment.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilmember Barber, seconded by Councilmember Page. Any further comments? Seeing none, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, rezone of approximately 4.0 acres of property at 292 West Blooming Grove Circle from light agricultural to single-family residential zoning district to include the PRUD overlay zone.
I would like to present the next item at the same time.
Okay.
It's the preliminary plat of that same property.
Mm-hmm. Could you stand? Thanks.
I don't know if I can. It's also the preliminary plat. This property property is located down at the bottom of Sunset Drive where it turns into Shepherd Lane. As you can see highlighted in yellow, it actually takes its access off of, you got to push the other button to point. Takes its access off of what's called Blooming Grove Circle to the east there. Currently one home on the property. They would like to be able to subdivide the property and create a couple other lots. You can see the zoning around it is primarily R120. The subdivision plat would create a private lane off the end of the cul-de-sac with 3 new lots meeting the R120 zoning. PRUD is required for the private lane aspect. Private lane plus the cul-de-sac is less than the 600-foot limit, so it meets that requirement. So it's reviewed by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval for both the rezone and the preliminary plat.
Okay, thank you. All right, there hasn't been anybody to sign up on either of these items, so we'll open it up to questions from council at this time. Any questions? No questions on either? Okay. We'll go with item D, and I will take a motion on item D at this time.
I'll move for the rezone of 4 acres at 292 West Blooming Grove Circle from A1 light agriculture to R120 single-family residential to include planned residential unit development overlay zone.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, let's go to a vote. Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. I would also entertain a motion for E.
I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat approval for Blooming Grove.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Page. Any comments at this time? Okay. Councilmember Garn.
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes 5-0. All right, thank you. Next is request to rezone 2.0 acres of property at 427 West Burton Lane from RA residential agricultural to R1 LD single family low density zoning. Andy.
And again, the preliminary plat will follow right behind, so I'll describe them both at the same time. Property is located at the corner of Burton Lane and Sunset Drive, as highlighted here. Currently consists of 3 lots. And you can see it there, it's in the RA zone. The request is to rezone it to R1LD with the intent of subdividing those 3 lots into 4 lots. Those are all 3/4 acre lots currently. The RA zone requires half-acre lots, so there's enough square footage there to create an additional lot under the R1LD zone, which, as you recall, is a density zone, which allows 2 units per acre. The amount of acreage there is adequate with the 2 acres to accommodate the 4 lots. The new lot, well, 1 lot would remain essentially untouched. The other developed lot would lose a portion of the backyard, and then there's an undeveloped lot to the south, and a portion of that would be taken out. This lot would be just over the 12,000 square feet as required by the LD zone. The rest of the lots will well exceed that. And again, the average is 2 per acre. Other remaining new lot is configured a little bit awkwardly with the flag behind it. That's to accommodate the barn on the property that's already there. This does all comply with all the ordinances of the LD zone. And again, it was recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. Nobody signed up to comment on either of these items, so we'll go directly to council comments. Any comments at this time?
Is it,
Councilmember Hanson.
Is it questions right now? Am I?
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Questions?
Just a question on the smallest lot. I guess both of them, well, never mind. They're both going to go on to Sunset. That's the plan.
They would access on Sunset, yes.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, never mind.
Okay. Any other questions at this time? Any from that end of the table? Any questions? No?
Are the
Councilmember Adams.
So is this an existing subdivision?
This is currently a 3-lot subdivision, yes.
So the 2 homes and then the barn lot is that's an existing platted subdivision, has been for
That's correct.
20 years or?
If you want the real history, this was the property that the Blood family donated to the city.
Mm-hmm.
The city then sold it and created that endowment fund that we talked about earlier this evening.
Interesting
So
how it all came
just
together.
Just by coincidence.
And the background.
Well, there was other property as well, but this was one of the portions, yes.
The only background on the concern is that, people teaming up with the neighbor, creating a new subdivision, kind of like what happened in Hill Farms, and open space was essentially kind of negotiated with neighbors to create smaller lots out there. If this is, as you say, a 20-year-old plus subdivision with the 2 homes in the 1 lot, then I have no concern. It's already platted that way.
Yes, it is platted that way.
Okay. All right. Okay, I would entertain a motion on F at this time.
I'll make a motion to rezone 2 acres of property at 427 West Burton Lane from RA residential agriculture to R1LD, single-family, low-density zoning.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilmember Garn and seconded by Councilmember Hanson. Any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0. I will now entertain a motion for G.
I'll move that we approve the preliminary plat approval for the Lindsay subdivision.
Okay. Second, anyone?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Barber and seconded by Councilmember Adams. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes 5-0. All right. H, Resolution 18-4-03, intent to consider a boundary line adjustment with Layton City at approximately 166 West Mutton Hollow Road. Andy.
This property is on the north end of town, just off Mutton Hollow Road, obviously adjacent to Layton City. Property to the north in Layton attempted to build a building, found that they were a foot or so short of meeting the setback requirement required in Layton. They approached the neighbor to the south in Kaysville and were able to make a deal to acquire that 1 or 2 feet that they required. However, to make it all work right, that property needs to be in Layton. So the request is to adjust the common boundary between Kaysville and Layton, not approximate, I believe it was 2 or 3 feet. Process of a boundary exchange, the first step in the process is to adopt the resolution expressing your intent to consider the boundary adjustment, and that's the action tonight. This doesn't change anything tonight. It just says that you're willing to consider this. Then we go through the processes outlined by state statute. It will come back to you probably in about a month with a final adoption of the annexation if you're willing to do that.
Okay. All right. We don't have anybody signed up to comment on this item, so we'll open it up to council questions. Questions? Okay. I will entertain a motion at this time.
Well, I move that we adopt the resolution of intent to consider the boundary line adjustment with Layton City.
A second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Page and seconded by Councilmember Garn. Councilmember Hanson.
Aye.
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 And I neglected to ask if there are any other comments. Sorry about that, if there were. Okay. All right, we'll go on to I. Final plat approval for the Preserve Subdivision Phase 1 located at 101 South Angel Street, Symphony Homes. Andy?
We've reviewed this project over the last several weeks. Property's down off of 2nd North at the top of the map and Angel Street at the bottom. The property here in the middle is the Preserve Subdivision. First phase is highlighted there in yellow. This is the preliminary plat that was approved a few weeks ago. They've now submitted the final plat for the first phase. As you recall, during the discussion of the preliminary plat, there was some concern about construction access not coming through the adjacent neighborhood. through the roads here. Symphony Homes has made a deal that was included in the, I believe, the preliminary plat approval with remaining property owners to allow a construction access road through the property down to Angel Street. That road will be open and functioning. It won't be a fully paved street, but an access lane, which will have to be in place and functioning before we issue the first building permit. The other minor item just to bring to your attention, as you notice here on the north end, there's a stub road that exceeds 1 lot deep. The ordinance requires that it have a turnaround, acceptable turnaround. They have proposed to include that turnaround within the driveways of the home. The ordinance actually says where a street longer than 1 lot is designated to remain only temporarily as a dead-end street, an adequate turning area shall be provided. I reviewed this with the fire chief. He was satisfied with the dimensions, and these are much easier to deal with than putting a bulb within the lots that then has to be removed at some time when the road's extended and landscaping restored and those kind of things. So just so we're aware that's occurring here. Other than that, this plat complies with the newly zoned, you rezoned it to the R1LD some time ago. It's identical in all material aspects to the preliminary plat and was recommended by the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. And we have no public comment on this, so we will go to council questions.
Can I ask one?
Of course, Councilmember Hanson.
Just on that turnaround, it just seems like it's come up in past council meetings. Do they just make those driveways any sturdier than normal so they can handle a fire truck?
They do, yes. They make them wider, deeper, and thicker.
To accommodate that?
Yes. And then they grant an easement to us that gives us the right to drive on those for that turnaround.
Okay. And if the subdivision, ever gets developed to the north, do you release that easement out then, or no?
That's correct. Yes, we would. It's a temporary turnaround easement.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move that we approve the final plat for the Preserve Subdivision Phase 1.
And I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Page, seconded by Councilmember Hanson. Any comments at this time? Okay, Councilmember Page.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passes 5-0.
This will be the last final plat that you'll approve based on the ordinance amendment you did at the last meeting. This was in the process, so we figured it was safe just to follow through. And so these other ones that you did preliminary on, you won't see the final.
All right. Thank you, Andy. All right, we're going to move on to our work items. I just want to note it's still light outside, just so you know. All right. All right, let's go to our budget discussion. And is it Shane or Dean?
Let me start, if that's
yes,
okay.
Please.
I think this discussion can go any way you want it to go. We would like to have a budget discussion at the next 3 council meetings before the final budget's approved. We can do a lot of good work in between meetings if we need to here and there, answering questions. I think Councilmember Page's comment is a very valid one. If you can reach out to the department heads or to myself, I think you'll get a lot of your questions answered and feel better about a lot of things. We can do whatever you not want tonight. If you have concerns or anything that's come up from the last budget meeting, we can address that. We do have Mr. Belknap here, and if you remember, one of the discussion topics we talked about at the budget retreat was the salt shed. We have not included the salt shed in this budget, and I would still reiterate that is probably a priority from my perspective. Josh has looked at several ways that we can try and pay for that and over in installments over a few years. It's a very expensive item, so it's not something to be taken lightly. We don't necessarily need to focus on that tonight. But if you wanted to discuss that, he's prepared to talk about that. But we're here for answering questions, and we can have this discussion go any way you'd like. So,
okay, thank you. All right. So So, Dean, question for you. Tell us about the items that were placed on our desk. Updates. Tell me what we're
Changes.
looking at.
When we met a couple weeks ago in our Saturday meeting, as you recall, we had a gap in the general fund, and the requirement is that we present a balanced, tentative budget. So in order to cover that gap, we pulled out, as Shane mentioned, we pulled out the salt storage building. So that was $110,000 pulled out of the general fund, and then we adjusted some revenue numbers a little bit to make the general fund balance. And that also required us to pull out $70,000 from the water fund and $40,000 from the stormwater fund. And we adjusted retained earnings in both those. So we've given you cover sheets there or inserts, and hopefully they're identified where you can put those inserts. And then we've also given you a budget summary that fits behind tab 2. And that is the summary that will be the basis for the tentative budget. So a general fund of about $15 million, and then all other enterprise funds and other funds. So that's what we've given you tonight to make that change.
Okay. All right.
In some cities,
Yes.
Mayor, the council members bring their books in and we put them in there for you. We're happy to do that. So,
Oh, I brought my book.
well, we're happy
So
to
hand it over to Shane.
hand it over, and I
he'll
will sit here and
stuff
do it.
that for you.
I can
Thank
do
you.
that. Dean did make it very easy to find out
Bring it to
where
me
things
tomorrow,
go.
and I'll do it.
You know, I hear there's an intern. That's a great job for an intern, don't you think? What day is your intern coming
I can
next?
put it in
I
my
think it'll be here Monday.
Okay, so Monday, if you would like the intern to stuff the binders,
I can do
that's a
it.
great job.
I can handle it.
Okay.
I got it.
All right, thank you. All right, so council members, I don't have anything specifically planned for this item. Anything you specifically want to have presented in the next work items concerning the budget? I'm willing to take direction from you, because this will be this is our policy statement. Our budget is our policy statement, so want to get it right. Councilmember Garn, you had something?
So going back to the salt shed for a minute, that's expensive, and we don't think that we can find it less expensive. I think it was like 110,000. Why?
Plus 70 plus 40, so 220.
Oh, 220. So what makes it so expensive? I mean, does it have just a roof, or have 3 sides and a roof, or?
Yeah, so this structure, we wanted to, number one, safeguard the asset of the dyed salt that we now purchase. That has to be kept out of contact with moisture, otherwise the dye runs. Also, keeping in compliance with the findings from the stormwater audit from the state dated February of 2010. Requirement at the end saying that storage piles of salt used for de-icing or other commercial or industrial purposes and that generate a stormwater discharge, which ours does, associated with this industrial activity, shall be enclosed or covered. Currently, we put tarps on the salt, and it doesn't meet that requirement. We still have runoff. But the reason that the building costs so much is it's an engineered structure. It's got structural members in it. It's got to be able to withstand, those darn engineers. It's got to be able to withstand wind loads. It's got to meet Kaysville ordinances and requirements. And we have to have enough room to store the salt. So this building is 80 feet wide by 105 feet deep. So it's rather large. You get an east wind or a west wind, and if it's just a kind of an easy up type structure, it's now on the railroad tracks or in somebody's home. So
it looks a little bit like a lean-to, or how's it?
Yeah, I've got some pictures that I can provide. that we've modeled ours after, or modeled the proposal after. I don't know if you'd like to see the pictures, if that's appropriate.
Well, maybe I should just summarize where I'm going. I mean, I'm curious. I really think I'd like to see it left in the budget and constructed. I was just wondering,
so
why if we could bring the cost down some.
It's made of material that gives us a warranted life. I believe it's at least 20 years. It's a lifetime warranty. So it's a specialized material. I've worked with these buildings before. Very robust, reliable, safe structures that are able to, I don't know if you can see that there.
Yeah.
It's an open-ended structure that would accommodate large stockpiles of salt, so we can keep stockpiles, if we have remainder at the end of the season, we don't have to hope and pray that the tarps keep the dye and the salt for the next year. Right. It's easily maintained.
I'm totally convinced on that.
Yeah.
Did we go out to, was there more than one bidder?
So we haven't bid it yet.
Okay.
We received estimates from a couple of companies and tentative designs on a structure. So this would be, for the most part, salt storage, but it also gives the ability to get some other equipment for the water and stormwater department out of the sun and try and delay sun rot and protect from the elements there. So
yeah, so again, just to summarize, Mayor, I'd like to see the most reasonable approach to getting that built as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Page, a question.
Yeah, hey, just a question. If this structure with regulations changing, if this structure is not built, how in the world do you store the salt for winter, or you don't store the salt for winter?
We still store it, but what we have are tarps that we have to send guys out. Anytime we are putting salt on the ground, they have to get the wet tarps off that are sometimes covered with snow. And then when we're done, you spend a shift that's 14 hours, and you then get the fun task of recovering the salt, and it's still not keeping the moisture out.
Okay, do you worry about not being in compliance?
Absolutely. So that finding that I read to you, if the state were to conduct another audit, so it's been over 8 years now, and they typically cycle between 7 to 10 years. So without that structure, the state could say, well, yeah, you are attempting something, but your attempt is not sufficient to meet that requirement of prevent the discharge, prevent the runoff.
All right. So what you're saying is by not preparing for a lot of salt for a winter, that means we're going to have a real bad winter. You know that, right?
Yeah. That's karma. Right?
So maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Josh. Okay. All right. So I think that didn't mean to spring this on you. If you want to think about it, think back to our budget retreat and any specific issue that you want to put as a work item and to hash through prior to the budget, please send me an email and we will consider putting it on the agenda. Yes, Shane.
And I guess along those same lines, if you want any specific staff member to come and talk about their requests, they're always better answering those requests themselves rather than having me try and fumble through what they're trying to do.
Sure.
I can understand it, and then I can't relay it very well. And maybe one other just real quick comment about the salt shed. I think if it is something that the council is interested in doing, I think there are maybe 3 different ways we could do it. We could as you know, we have to balance our general fund, and it's about $100,000 of a hit to that fund. So we can cut somewhere $100,000. We could spend $100,000 in one-time money because this is kind of a capital expense. It wouldn't be ongoing, which if it's ongoing maintenance, we wouldn't recommend that. But if it's just a one-time, it might be something that works. And then the third way would be a lease. I'm calling it a lease, but maybe just breaking over that payment over 5 years. And I think Josh has some information about that. We don't have to go over that tonight, but he has some information about that if you're interested in what that might look like over 5 years. And I think we could do that. And it's just an obligation we'd have for 5 years or 3 years or whatever we decide to do that.
And it's actually, what I heard was $220,000, not $100,000, correct?
For the shed?
For the shed.
Yes.
We also heard, though, that there was no issue.
Councilmember Adams.
In the budget session, these issues, it was asked, and it said, no, everything is actually okay. There's no stormwater pollution and this and that. So we're just getting a lot of new information tonight, not from you. You didn't say those words.
So
what was said in our meeting.
220?
So it's actually 240.
240.
It includes the erection of the structure.
Okay. All right. We want to.
But that's 110 from general
right.
fund to cover the salt portion, 70 from water to cover some of their storage items, and then 40 from stormwater to cover the storage of their
And Josh,
items.
that's the second size down, right? Originally, we had the 100 by 120.
Yeah, so...
And that was the 220, but we left off the erection.
Yeah, so the erection of that structure was quite a bit more, 60 to 70. So we're now sitting at 240 for the smaller structure. The structure is now only 187 instead of 220. We've reconfigured kind of a layout that we feel like would work. And if we did do like a capital lease or finance option, 5 years, it would be quarterly payments of $13,000 or $4,000 a month, $4,500 a month.
Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll chew on that. Okay. All right. So moving forward, please, if there's something specific that you feel needs to come. Yes, Councilmember Barber.
I have a couple questions first out. Where do I find anywhere where it shows the surplus that we have in the budget? I'm sure it's here, but I can't find it.
It's just a programmed revenue. If you look at tab 6, the very last page,
The fund balance budget?
Yeah, where you see fund balance.
Okay.
That is the amount that we've programmed for this budget. It doesn't show the fund balance total because this is a budget and not a financial
yeah, it
statement.
just shows how much we're taking from that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You'd have to go to your annual financial report to see the actual balance.
Okay. All right. All right. Thank you.
Can we say now who I'd like what we'd like to discuss next week?
In 2 weeks, yeah.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I always say that. We all know. That I'll look at it and bring back the surplus question that I had. Thank you. The police additional request that we had there.
Okay.
I think it was for one additional officer, maybe more. And then the fire, just the transition from the part-time fire department to full-time. I know it's been gradual, but.
So maybe a public safety night.
Yeah, exactly, to talk about those line items. And then, the money in the buildings for Parks and Rec as well.
Okay.
The change there.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, Councilmember Adams. Yes.
A quick thought on that salt shed. With the water line projects, I've noticed we're shifting over to C900, and I don't know if that's going to be a permanent thing or not. But there is, as you know, quite a bit of HDPE sitting in the yard. And the last time that I ran an accounting of that, it was over 6 figures in value of pipe. And I also had other vendors who told me, you've got more than we have on the ground. We've got people who would buy that. So if we're making a shift away from C900, there's perhaps a creative way. I might still argue to put that into roads instead of a salt shed, but I might be a little more lenient to put it towards a salt shed if we could generate $90,000 in selling that. I don't want to, my preference would not be to see it get auctioned off for bottom dollar.
Pennies.
It would be to contact, legitimate vendors with legitimate yards and discuss with them if they can help us broker those materials.
So
we
as part of Public Works Week, one of the things that we'll be doing is re-inventorying what we do have out in the yard. We have moved towards C900. We don't want to use ductile iron piping for our water lines. We do want to use HDPE where it makes sense, but we have far more than we would ever need on hand from years past. So we want to get rid of the material. It takes up space. It makes it difficult for the Parks Department to maintain the yard. So yeah, absolutely, we would love that opportunity to see some of that move down the road. So,
Where it's all brand new.
Yeah.
The other vendor, I mean, this stuff
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
rot.
We have some racks that are still banded, so untouched, unused. It's great, and it's bulletproof pipe. Jared, our water manager's here. He doesn't love it because the install is a little more laborious and working around large lengths of pipe. But my previous 2 jobs, I worked quite a bit with it, loved it. But we have limitations here, and having that much period, even if it was all we wanted to use, is not wise. So
Okay.
I support Jared in that. I'm going to agree fully with him.
Love it.
It's a
All
pain
right.
in the neck.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Josh. All right. I think we're going to move to council member reports. All right. We don't have anybody signed up for call to the public tonight. Let's start with our youth. Youth City Council and Youth Court. Youth Court, anything?
Nothing to report on youth court tonight.
Mayor, I need to run.
Okay. Youth City Council, anything?
Yeah, we're actually put out a call for applications for our new city council, so be looking for that. All high school students are welcome to apply, and yeah, that's all for youth.
Okay.
City council.
All right. Public Works.
Yeah, so May 20th to the 26th is Public Works Week. And Public Works has went out and met with the first elementary school, which I think is really cool. I'm going to try and make the second one, 2 more elementary schools, first grade classes. And they're having a naming contest to name the vac truck with a picture attached, and whoever wins that gets to see the mayor.
Whoa.
I know, right?
I will be there.
The mayor will show up and do a presentation. So,
I'm excited about that.
and also the striping, I guess, maybe as early as May 24th, the striping over the aqueduct might be done with 4 lanes. And Councilmember Barber suggested that perhaps we have a little ceremony to do that. So that seems like a great idea. 200 North is moving along. It might be shut down a couple of times, once on May 11th and 13th, and I'm not sure when the second date is. And we have some water line replacement projects, and they're moving along first on 150 South, and then after that on Market and Borough Street. And as our Public Works Director mentioned, some of those streets will be, the second 2 I think will be completely replaced, and some of that because the water line will be able to come out of the water fund as well. And that's it for Public Works.
Okay. How about community development?
You know what? I want to go for record if we're getting out of here soon, so I'm going to pass on that.
Okay, pass.
Oh,
Howard?
come on, Larry.
Is it okay to bring Shane in on the award?
Yes.
'Cause I don't-
Yeah, please.
Shane, can you
Do you want
explain?
to talk about the award that was presented earlier this evening to our power department?
So it is a kind of a, we don't have anybody, Gary and Bruce are gone, aren't they? RP3 is a designation that comes from the American Public Power Association, and it's a series of sustainability. I think there was 4 things. You're catching me off guard, but I just barely sent a latest news to our website. So if you go to our website and you look at that, it talks about what that award is and why you get it. We're a gold member. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 levels that we can even work up to. But what it says is that we're safe, that we're reliable, that we're sustainable, and that we're making good power decisions. I think it gives our customers a level of comfort that at least through the American Public Power Association's eyes, we're doing a good job. There are 9 of, I think, 35 public power organizations in Utah that have this award, so we're one of 9. So I think it's very exciting. There was an event back east that we didn't end up sending anybody to just because it was a cost to get there, but they had on April 30th, they had some kind of awards banquet, so pretty exciting.
Thanks for letting me catch you off guard. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Councilmember Barber on Parks and Rec.
Oh, yes. So we have our Memorial Day program coming up. The Monday of Memorial Day, the Friday before, they'll be placing a flag on every veteran's grave in the cemetery. And then we have our Memorial Day program that Monday that everyone's invited to. And then we have our 4th of July. It's coming along really nicely.
Yes. And I am lobbying for the bucket truck and somebody in the bucket truck. It's somebody in the bucket. I don't know. Maybe me. Apparently it's an OSHA violation, but whatever. So anyway, for our float entry. I do want to mention if anybody has an interest in serving on the Planning Commission, the applications are available online or in the office. They are due back in 2 weeks. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the date. I think it is the 17th.
22nd, I believe.
22nd, thank you. All right. And also, I did want to just make mention of the passing of one of our community members, Carolyn Pearson, who did amazing things for our community. I feel like I got gypped because I only got to meet her just a few months ago, and she was one of the key members to put together our sesquicentennial celebration for March. And even up until March, she was very full of ideas, and I'm regretting not agreeing to riding in on a wagon like she wanted me to. But she was a great member of the community. She was very instrumental in the development of Heritage Park and the splash pad and many other things. And so I know many people in our community are grieving the loss of Carolyn tonight. So I just want to make mention of that. All right. Anything else that we're missing? Take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting closed. Thanks.